We live in a world that rewards success and mocks failure. But what if I told you one often comes at the expense of the other? And if you want to succeed at anything, including motorcycles, you'll have to accept a certain amount of risk. Riding a motorcycle successfully is all about managing the risk. The two ways that we manage the risk as riders are the pillars of every MCrider video: road skills and road strategy. Road skills are the physical skills that we learn as riders. How to start and stop a motorcycle, how to stop a motorcycle in an emergency, how to swerve, or how to brake and escape. All of those vital skills for street riders that they need to master. But just as importantly, we focus on the mind of the rider with road strategy. Road strategy keeps us out of many situations so that we don't have to use those road skills. Instead of reacting to our environment, we plan for it ahead of time with a good road strategy.
Well, it's really logic. And so many people lead their lives by reacting rather than by thinking. And really, when you think about it, why do we have these incredibly sophisticated brains with these big frontal lobes? Because we're the only creatures that God made with the ability to extract information from the past and the present and to project it into a plan for the future. So we don't have to react. And when we don't do that, we place ourselves in tremendous jeopardy because we place ourselves in a situation where we can only react.
So, as we're riding, we're always managing risk. The problem that many people face today is their inability to see risk in its proper perspective, especially when it comes to the decision on whether to ride a motorcycle in the first place. If you ride a motorcycle, raise your hand if you've heard this or something similar to this before. Well, you ride a motorcycle, you must have a death wish. Or, I've always wanted to ride, but it's not worth the risk. Or one of my favorites, don't buy a motorcycle because you'll kill yourself on it. The problem with these statements about risk is they only see the risk situation from one perspective. They answer the question of, what is the worst thing that can happen if I do this? They fail to look at the positive side of risk and ask the question, what's the best thing that can happen if I do this? It's only by looking at both sides of the risk equation that we can make a rational decision. I was having a discussion with a family member once. Not close family, the kind that you see on holidays, not a part of your daily life the rest of the year. This was right around the time I was starting MCrider, and he was asking me what I was doing for work these days. Not wanting to get into the whole YouTube discussion, I told him I was a motorcycle trainer. He looked at me for a second and said, "You train some of the dumbest people on earth then." I wish I'd had a witty comeback, but I didn't have anything that was really noteworthy to say at the time. But that statement has resonated with me. I wish I could go back in time and respond with something like, "No, I train people who are pursuing life on their own terms rather than letting life happen to them on its terms." You see, my family member was looking at life through a very narrow prism. What's the worst thing that can happen if you ride a motorcycle? But it's only by looking at both sides of the risk evaluation that we can come to a rational decision and make an informed choice on the risk. And then once we accept the risk, we need to move that needle of the risk as far as we can in our favor. But in order to reap the reward, we have to take the risk.
I found that nothing in life is worthwhile unless you take risks. Nothing. Nelson Mandela said, "There is no passion to be found playing small and settling for a life that's less than the one you're capable of living."
Some people are really bad at risk assessment. Many people are terrified to fly in a commercial plane, but those same people have no problem getting in a car and traveling across the country. According to the National Safety Council, the average person living in the United States has a 1 in 102 chance of dying in a car crash in their lifetime, compared to 1 in 205,552 chance of dying as a passenger in an airplane in their lifetime. This means that you're more than 2,000 times more likely to die in a car than on a plane, but some of those people will take a car every time. One big factor in perceived risk is the attention that risk gets in the media and the general public. Just about every day right here in the city that I live, Dallas-Fort Worth, there's a fatal car crash. It hardly ever makes the news. But if a major airline crashes out on the West Coast, it's headline news all over the country. The media makes the news by what they choose to report on. They set the narrative, but it's up to us to look at the information from an informed perspective. The attention to the airline crash increases the perceived risk of traveling by air, and as a result, many people are afraid to fly. Motorcycle fatalities are similar in that they receive much more attention than car crashes, and thus they raise the perceived risk. It's a common situation if it comes up in a casual conversation that I ride motorcycles. Someone will always have some story about a cousin who died on a motorcycle, or their uncle who is never the same after his motorcycle crash. I've never told anybody about the new truck that I've got, and their response was, I had an uncle who died in his truck. That's kind of weird, but even if you look at the raw numbers, there are many more people who die in cars and trucks every year than on a motorcycle. Now, these numbers do change if you look at the stats on per mile traveled. That'll give us a clearer picture of the motorcycle risk, but at least that is based on something measurable and not the emotional story of somebody's uncle who died on a motorcycle. When faced with that conversation about someone's uncle, if you press the issue by asking some questions, you often start to get a clearer picture of the crash. You might ask them, was your uncle drinking? Was your uncle wearing full protective gear? How fast was your uncle riding his motorcycle when he crashed? Was it day or night when he crashed? Did your uncle attend regular training and keep his skills sharp on the motorcycle? You see, many people look at a motorcycle crash and they blame the motorcycle. However, if we take control of the risk and reduce the factors that get riders in trouble, we may not be as crazy as they think we are. So that brings up the big question, is riding a motorcycle worth the risk? If your idea of riding a motorcycle consists of riding from bar to bar and having a few drinks, for me the answer is no, it's not worth the risk. If your riding consists of riding without a helmet or way above the speed limits or recklessly through traffic, and you have the minimum required skill to get that motorcycle rolling, again, the answer for me is no, it's not worth the risk. But if you control the risk and evaluate both sides of that risk equation to include what's the best thing that can happen to me if I do ride a motorcycle and control my risk, the answer for me is without a doubt a resounding and a clear-eyed yes. It is worth the risk I take by riding a motorcycle. I hope you found this conversation thought-provoking, and I hope you'll use it to manage the risks in your life and to step out there and take those risks strategically. Before we end the video for this week, I want to leave you with one more quote. And until then, guys, this is Kevin with MCrider, and I'll see you on the road.